Welcome to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast, where we empower women to own their power, create influence and impact, and live life unapologetically AF. It's time to leverage your expertise, resources, and relationships to build your business, brand, and badassery. So just click subscribe and let's get it. I'm your host, Kelly Charles Collins. Welcome to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast. Today, my special guest is Mia Carr. Mia is the founder of the brand Snuggle Me Organic. And she created this popular lounger, which has become a must-have product for new moms. Mia is a mother of 7. Yes, you heard that right, 7. So the lounger gave her a much needed extra pair of arms when she was caring for a toddler and newborn twins in 2007. I cannot wait to hear this story. Listen, when I read about Mia, I was just like, this has to come to our listeners. And what I want you to know is that this brand, and Mia will talk about this brand that basically started out at her home can now be found in major retailers like Target and has a massive social media following. So Mia, thank you so much for being on the Ladies Who Leverage podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me here.
This is awesome. So I want to talk to, because when I think about ladies who leverage, right, and I'm always talking about talking to the women in my community about leveraging all of our resources, our expertise, our relationships, all of that stuff. So when we talk about Snuggle Me Organic, I want to talk with you first about the what. What is it? And then we're going to go into the how and the why.
Yes. So the Snuggle Me Lounger is essentially a baby lounger that has a indentation in the center. It's raised up a little bit. So when you lay the baby on top, the sides are then going to pull in around them to snuggle them. So it gives them the sensation of being held or touched, which when I was having 2 twins at home, that is something that I really, really needed. My husband was away at work and I was home, and every mom, even if they don't have twins, needs this extra support. So that's essentially what the product is and does and gives to the parents.
That is so awesome. And you talk about the fact that, you had twins. And when we talk about the Snuggle Me Lounger,
yes,
this was back in 2007, right?
Yes.
When this came to your mind. So tell us, how did this, what seems like such a simple product, because when you see it, you're just like, okay, that makes sense, right? How did this come to mind, and why? Like, why did you decide to create this product?
It really had to do with, like I had said, being home alone with 2 babies and needing somebody to basically just come in and hold one, right? Because there's this constant juggle of, okay, you need to be fed. Okay, now you need to be changed. And having that, again, support is what I really was needing. And I think my mother-in-law had come over and she had asked me that question. She said, what do you need? Do you need meals? Do you need this? And I said, no, I just need someone to sit here, hold a baby for me so I can take care of myself or the other baby. And so the idea of a portable nest that could be moved anywhere around the house came to our minds.
So you were asked by your mother-in-law, like, what do you need? And so often we think that, what people need, or new moms need, is like food, or, like, do you just need to, what are they think tangible things? And you were like, I just need some support to be able to go do some other things. Now, had you had in your mind at any time before, had you ever created anything like this, or this was just something that came to you?
This is something that just came to us. Me and my mother-in-law did this jointly together. But I will say, yes, like it came, like, before this, I was a preschool teacher. So I had no business experience at the time. And we thought it would be fun to do a baby product. And I was, again, home alone with all these kids and needed another outlet. So it was a perfect little experiment, I guess you could say.
So now you created the lounger, but what was it that you thought, okay, this is the design that I need to create in order to manifest what it is I'm thinking about in terms of support?
Well, originally we had used kind of like a boppy. I don't know if you know what those are.
Mm-mm.
And we would put a blanket over top of it and we would put the baby on it, but they would slide down. And in my mind, I thought, well, what if you put like two of them together, right? And end to end, and then it was just a piece, and they couldn't really get under it, and it actually kept them in place and snuggled them. So I think that's kind of the idea that had first come to us. And it's like, then, well, how do you create that?
Yeah.
And we had, it probably only took 5 or 6 attempts because we had it in our head what we wanted it to be and do. And so, yeah, like I said, 6 attempts approximately, and we were good to go.
Yeah. And so I don't know what a boppy is, and maybe some of
Okay.
the listeners don't.
It's like a breastfeeding pillow that's like a
Okay.
half, like a horseshoe kind of shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But with that, that wouldn't have given you all of the support
No,
that you were
no.
thinking.
And it essentially, if you took two of them and put them together, kind of like little magnets, that, and then put like a piece of fabric in the center, right? Then that would then create what we had in our mind.
Yeah.
So
And so when you started making this, was it something that just you and your mother-in-law what's her name?
her name is Lori.
You and Lori. So I'll just say Lori. So
Sure.
when you and Lori decided, okay, now we have it in our mind, we know what this needs to look like. Did both of you create it, or did you pull in other people to help you?
We created it ourselves. We sewed it on our kitchen tables. We went out to, Joann Fabrics and bought the materials to make them. I had just taken a sewing class at like the local community center, and we were making quilts. And so I brought this sewing machine that I had used for that, and I said, well, I can probably do this, right?
Mhm.
And so we just made them, and I mean, we went to, like I said, Joann's, and got the filling, and we hand filled them all and sewed them. And I'm like, all right, we did it.
Yeah. And
Right.
I love that, right? I
Right.
love that you say, I just thought that I could, so I did.
Right. Right.
And
Absolutely.
right? And
Mhm.
so many times we have these ideas in our head and we think, "Oh my gosh, there's no way I could do this."
Right.
So, what was it about you, Mia, that said, "No, you know what? This is the idea that I have. Lori and I have this idea, and we are going to do this."
Right. I would say I'm extremely stubborn, and I don't really like rules. Right. So when someone says I can't do something, that actually gives me more fuel to then go ahead and do it. I guess I've also been listening to a lot of people during that time and reading a lot of books on just success. Like it kind of fascinated me. How is it that some group of people can succeed and do all these things, where another group of people are told, no, you can't, right? And that fascinated me, and it really, I kind of discovered it's all made up, right? And it's all in your mind. The people who are successful have chosen and have stepped outside of the norms and have just gone ahead and did it anyway. So
Yeah. It's a decision,
it's a
right?
decision.
And you can make either one. You can choose
Right.
to say you
Yep.
can't do it, or you can choose to say
Yep.
you can do it. And
Right.
it doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, because what you
No.
said, listen, we tried it five, by the time we
Yep.
got to the sixth time, we were like, okay, this is it,
Right.
right? Now,
Right.
when you were doing it in those first, the one, two, three, four, why didn't you give up?
Because I could see it. And I'm also a very creative person too. And so when you get into that flow of creativity and just determination, you have to almost see it to the end, right? I think that's kind of a learned thing for some people, that it just has to come out, right? And there's also no risk at that point, right? It's just me and my mother-in-law and a sewing machine. There's no one watching. It's just us,
Right.
you know. So there's no fear. So
Right. Yeah,
anyway,
just do it, right?
it
And
was
you
just
never know.
exactly, you never know where it's going to take you. I think the creating of the product was by far the easiest thing we did. right? It's everything that came after that
Yeah.
that was the character shaping stuff.
All
So,
right, so let's talk about that because I think that's important too. So we get to the sixth iteration and you're like, this is it.
sure.
This is what was in my mind. It is now in a physical product. What was
Right.
the next thing that you did? Because now you have to get it off of your kitchen table into the world. So how did you do that?
We went to a local craft fair with our 12 little loungers and set up this little booth that had a homemade, sign that we had cut out with paper and glued that said Snuggle Me. And sat there and waited for people to come. And I remember the first mom that walked in and like we locked eyes and she knew that I was looking at her and like this
Like,
is
come
this is
over
our
here.
customer. Here she comes, right? And she had this little baby, and she put the little baby in it, and she's like, "Oh, that's really neat," And I'm like, "Okay, I'm addicted. Like all of this I'm just so addicted." And honestly, it's those little baby steps, right? And from there, we crafted the logos, and we built out our booth, and it was just one baby step on top of the next and a continuous go.
Yeah.
Right. So
So that first time at the craft fair, did you sell all 12 of
sold
them?
them all. Yep. We
Yeah.
sold them all.
That
Absolutely.
must have been a like a high for you. What did that make you feel
Sure.
like?
It made me feel as if maybe I had stumbled on to something that like you have these moments where you're like, this is it. Right. And I remember having that feeling of this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. I'm going to become this person who is this, CEO or creator and innovator. So it was a very defining moment.
Yeah.
I,
And that's interesting because that's a big jump because you said, before this, you had never been an entrepreneur, you were never a
right.
business owner. And so, to just follow your purpose. It's almost, people talk about passion and purpose, and I think purpose is this thing that just guides you. It is just who you are.
Mhm.
And it seems like you said when you locked eyes with that first mom, it was like, yes,
Yeah.
right? I know. And to be able to sell out in that first day and understand that I'm on the right track, right?
Right.
So
Right.
so now it's different though because so we have 12, we're at a fair. You're not going to make multi-millions of dollars, right,
Right.
at a
Right.
fair, right? And
Right.
and if you're going to scale this, you got to figure out, how we're going to do this. So you go
Right.
from this first fair to what is the next step that you take in your business that you say, okay, I need to do these sort of things in order to get to the next step.
Sure. And I think we plateaued for
Mm.
I would say almost 9 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
stuck in this routine of we make them, we sell them at craft fairs, we make them, we sell them at craft fairs. And at this time I was also raising our children, homeschooling, and I never really wanted it to necessarily move past that, up until we actually lost our house in 2009, during the housing collapse, and we moved in with my mother-in-law, say Lori,
Mm.
um, and through that time, I really started to go, what am I doing with myself? Right? Am I going to do this or not? And again, you have to make a decision. We ended up packing up all of our kids, our 6 kids at the time, drove in a camper out to Duluth, Minnesota, in a campground, and lived the summer there with our kids. And
Mm.
during that time, I had this stack of business books, and I'm like, I'm in it. Like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna YouTube it. And we figured out social media. I had hired our first marketing director who didn't end up working out in the end, but really taught me a lot about social media and kind of was giving me an opportunity to step outside my comfort zone and the small box that I was living in, and then able to connect more dots, right?
Yeah.
Go, okay, you know what? I think it's Instagram. I think that's it.
Right.
I think
Right.
Amazon, right? And we focused in on these handful of really key things and got really good at them, right? So I think, like, honestly, like, it was making a decision and then giving myself a large amount of space
Mm.
to be creative, to learn, and to really sit with some big ideas.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. I love that about creating space because sometimes
Right.
we get scared and then we don't create the space for the things to
Right.
happen because
Right.
we're narrowing and just being like, no, 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 it's not going to happen. And I think it's important too for people to know that when you came up with this idea, you were what, 24 years old,
Yep. Yep.
right? Had
Yep.
a toddler, had twins, right?
Mhm.
How old was and I don't know if it's a boy or girl. Was it a boy or girl who was the toddler?
All of those were boys. The
Okay.
first three. He was 2 when our twins were born.
Okay. Yeah.
So
And so, at 24, three kids, right? And
right.
I
Stay.
believe your husband was a truck driver at the
Yes.
time.
Yep.
So he's not there,
No. No.
right? And so you could have easily just been like, "Ugh, no,
Right. Right.
right? And I love that you just said, no, this is something that needs to be done. And also realizing as you were in those, years, those couple of years that yeah, I'm not playing full out, right? I
Right.
am I am
Right.
playing small right now. Like I need to go big
Right.
and realizing that you need to go big. So you go to this campground, you're like, okay, I'm going to go big. I'm going to learn what I need to learn. Google's going to be my BFF. It's my
Yeah.
BFF too, right? And
Yeah.
I'm going to learn how to do all this stuff. And then what was the next milestone that you took and step to say, yeah, we're going to go forward? And I love the niching down to the
Mhm.
Instagram and Amazon and really just going deep.
Yes. Well, the next, I think, big thing would be me taking over our Instagram account from
Hmm.
our then marketing director. She wasn't quite doing it the way I had envisioned, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna grab this thing, and I became, I mean, majorly obsessed with this goal. And I had told everyone I'm going to get 1 million followers on Instagram, right? And everyone thought I was insane. And I would just go and I couldn't even talk to anybody about my obsession but I knew it was it, right? I knew it was the path, and so I just kept at it, right? I think the next big milestone would be finding our brand director,
Hmm.
Sunny, who revolutionized our brand. And she was actually a customer of ours, and she would send me pictures, right? And she was a newborn photographer, and she would send me pictures of her son. She's like, look at how cute, and in the back of my head, I'm going, oh my gosh, like if I could just have you as like my visionary, like let's work together. And I'm grateful that she said yes, and she's still with us today. She's one of my best friends. And I'd say that was another defining moment because she came in, rebranded everything just by who she is, and just she just naturally does it. So
Yeah.
I think those two big events, me taking over the Instagram and then having Sunny alongside me to kind of take my vision and create it and outright, were probably the two defining
Yeah. And
events.
you made your goal on
I
Instagram.
made my goal.
Yeah. So tell us what it is right now.
Right now we're at 1.8 million followers on Instagram. And it's really funny because like when we actually hit 1 million followers, it wasn't nearly as exciting as when we hit 500,000 followers. Like there was this race going on between us and our competitors at the time. And I'm like, I'm going to get them, right? And I have to do this. And when we finally, surpassed and then, went on to definitely outgrow them, it was a really beautiful moment. And I remember our kids, like, we're dancing in the living room, just having a party. But then at that point, you've almost like grown, and you know like what it takes. And then when 1 million happened, it just kind of went by, right?
Yeah.
It was really
Right.
interesting.
You're like, oh,
Hey,
yeah,
yeah,
no. Now, without giving away trade secrets,
sure.
what was it like? What did you do, in terms of making sure that you grew your Instagram followers and were really consistent with? I imagine consistency, I should say, it was one of the things that you did. But
Yeah.
are there like a couple of tips that you can give to the listeners if
Yeah.
they want to grow their Instagram?
I would first say Instagram is a photography platform at its heart, right? And so image quality, capturing emotion in your images is key. Also, what I wanted to do when I took it over was connect to people, right? I want to be vulnerable. I want them to see who I am as a person, because I feel like that's the only way that customers will really root for a brand, right? Is if you know them and you know their struggle. And so I was just very open in our stories, and we would show everything that we were doing. And I would write these really vulnerable posts
Hmm.
about motherhood that people were really connecting to,
Yeah.
uh, and which is something that other brands weren't doing, right? And so like our engagement was really great. The other thing that we did to gain the followers, right? Because then, I mean, it really goes platform. You've got to get your platform right, the imagery, the content. But then once you got that, then you have to add in the traffic. And so we figured out influencer marketing pretty early on. I went all in with influencer marketing.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have an agent that we now work with. And when I had first met him, he's like, you know what? We can make so much money together, right? And I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Right.
Like,
Let's do it.
okay. And at first it's like, oh, do I trust this? But
Right.
the first, we worked with, people like Brittany Aldean, Jade Roper, some bachelorettes and
Mhm.
some other celebrities that way. And it started to work. And I went, hallelujah, right? Like finally I figured out like the keys. And as soon as our Instagram following went up, as we're, spending all this on influencer money, our revenue's going up, our Amazon's going up, everything is working. So influencer marketing, if you have one of those products that photographs well
Mhm.
and tells a story, there's some brands that work extremely well on Instagram, and ours happened to be one of them.
Yeah,
So
that's awesome. And so when you and Lori started out, making them on the kitchen table, so now you have, 1.8 million followers. You're no longer, I imagine, no longer in the kitchen table, but how did you go from we're making these maybe 12 at a time so we can go to the craft fair? Where are you now in terms of how you manufacture your product? And did you have to bring in other people to help you do that?
Yeah, for sure. So we still work with the same sewer that first took over the sewing from us probably 12 years ago, right?
Okay.
So and they're up in Duluth. They've got this little shop, and they just pump out, these lounger ticks for us, and they then get shipped to a few local pillow fillers in the area, and then they go from there, which is down the street. They come to our warehouse now in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, where we have a 23,000 square foot warehouse that I'm sitting in currently. And all of the product comes here. We assemble it. We've got a great team who inspects everything, packages it, and then it goes right back out the door. So
Now, Mia, when you were 24 years old saying, I just need an extra pair of
right.
hands, did you ever envision being sitting in a 20,000 plus square foot warehouse?
Yes,
You
I will
did?
say
Good.
you have to, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to envision the life that you want, and it's really enjoyable to like be able to sit in it and say, I imagine this, right? And
Yes.
I dreamed about this, and I put this intention out, and it came to me, right? So I think I have to say yes, I could envision. Now, did I really believe that it could come true? Probably not, like at that time, right? But everything that we are and everything that we've grown, we've envisioned along the way.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, is to create with the end in mind, right? So start
Right.
with the end in mind. And then I always talk about reverse engineering because that's what I do. Like anything that if I can visualize it, I can do it, right? Because I can go back and figure out what needs to be done. And
Exactly.
so it doesn't mean that you can't be fearful, right? In terms of, that's a big goal. That's a big dream,
Right.
right? Am I going to do it? But it also means that if you really want it to come true, you've got to do the work,
Right.
right?
Right. And
So I
and I
mean,
if you're fearful, that means it's big enough. Like if
Yes.
you're not fearful, then you're not nearly where you should be, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and then you got to do the work, right? So, so many of us are like, "Oh, it's just going to come to me. I'm going to
Yeah.
manifest it in the world." Well, manifestation requires action,
Right.
right? And so, do you now have a team? I imagine you now have a team.
Yes, we have an amazing team. I even have my stepfather and I have my mother who are here full time in our warehouse. I have my husband who does all of our financials. And I have our children who are teenage boys come here on the weekend and they do the trash and they build boxes and that so it's come definitely full circle, not to mention all of the other dozens of people that work here every day making this dream come true. So
Yeah, it's a full family
mhm,
business,
it is.
and the boys are the boys who really inspired this. The boys who now work there. So that must be just an amazing, full almost full circle moment for you to see them, be the inspiration of what this was and to now have them working in there.
Exactly. Yes, it's kind of been surreal, like as we've grown in this last maybe 4 years. Just oh my goodness, right? Like, is this really my life?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
And what a legacy to
right,
leave, right?
right.
What a legacy that you've built for your family and for the boys, and just really an inspiration for so many women. And I'm sure that the listeners will really be inspired by your story. And going forward in the story, we've talked about the craft fairs, we've talked about the fact that you have this 20,000 plus square foot warehouse. And you need that because it's not just that it's going to the craft fair. We've moved from craft fair to being in Target and to being in Bye Bye Baby. How did that come about?
Target specifically was something that I've dreamed about, right? It's like the best place to shop and be, and it's our ideal customer. And we had gotten a meeting with the buyer of Target, and it was another one of those surreal moments where we walk in and at first, like years before, we had actually tried to get a meeting with Target, and it was no way, right? It was a big X, no way. And walking into that meeting that day, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like we are like on the same level right now, right? Right? Like, holy smokes. And he knew the brand and was super excited and was a new buyer. And so therefore, like he was trying to like get some really good first accounts and he was just pumped, right, for Snuggle Me. So and I remember leaving that meeting going, God, like we really made it. So that's how that kind of went. And they signed us up on online and we're right now in half of the stores and we're working to build out all of the stores. But
Mhm.
we'll see if we get there. It's kind of like a bigger item for their shelves. But
Okay.
anyway, that's how Target went. And after you get Target, like things just kind of like snowball and
Hmm.
everything else just kind of gets
Yeah.
easier after
Yeah.
that. So bye bye baby was one of the accounts that we've been working with for several years, trying to kind of come to an agreement,
Mhm.
and finally have gotten to the point where they're willing to concede with what we're asking. So,
Right.
so
Right. Because you know the worth of your product.
right,
Right. And
exactly.
and it's not something to be given away. And when did you start with Target? Was it
I want to say early 2020.
okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so that's been a journey, right? That's the other thing to
Yeah,
think about. Look at, how successful you are now, but you started this back in 2007. And so
right.
this has really been a journey. And so when you talk about, we've been trying to get into Target and they
Right.
were like, big X no, right? You
Right.
you could have given up. And I just like asking questions around adversity because I think that that's so important for people to see because they see the success, they don't really know what the
Yes.
underlying is.
Yes.
So when Target says to you back in, no,
Mhm.
what keeps you going back to say, Target, no, you're going to have my product in your store?
Well, I would say that, on this journey all along, we've gotten knocked down more than we've gotten picked up, right? I mean, so failing becomes like the norm. I guess I'm really good at failing and then picking yourself up. Like if you can get good at that skill, you can go as far down the road as you really want to.
Yeah.
I think as you get more and more successful, the falls get bigger, right? And so you've got to get even thicker skin. So I guess it wasn't like a big deal for me when they said no. It's like, okay, fine. Well, I'm going to get it though. Like
Right.
get it. Get up and go, right? So
Yeah, and you just continue to do the things that you know need to
exactly.
be done in order to position yourself
Right.
to be in that space, right? And I love that you say about Bye Bye Baby that it's taken time, right? Because sometimes when we want to be in those spaces, we compromise on
Right.
our end, right?
Right.
What we think about ourselves, or maybe our pricing, or just something, because we want to be in that
Right.
space, as opposed to just standing in your power, which is what you did to say, we'll keep talking. I want to be there, but I
Right.
also want to make sure that what I created, what Lori and I created, what my family has created over these years, that we don't give that up
Right.
just for the purpose of being in Bye Bye Baby.
Right, right. And I think it also had to do with us really focusing in on the direct to consumer at the
Mm.
time as well. So, I mean, we had said we had a wholesale person, our salesperson Jen, who is amazing, right? And she would come to me with these accounts, go, how about this one? And I'm like, but we could make way more, right? If we just sold direct to consumer. And so I think we a little bit had the luxury of saying no. And I know some people would be in the position of not being able to choose, right?
Yeah,
So we just consciously said we're going to do consumer first, and then we're going to do wholesale as it kind of comes to us. But
yeah,
some people do the opposite, right? And they're scrambling to get into wholesale, and then that's what then brings the consumers in. So we just
yeah.
happen to do it the opposite way.
And me, I know you talked about in the beginning, hiring people, like branding people, marketing people. Did you ever hire coaches, like outside of just people who are helping you specifically on, the business operations? Did you hire coaches to help you?
I did not.
Hmm.
My coaches were YouTube. My coaches were my business books. I think now I've finally gotten to the place where I feel like I really do need that,
Hmm.
right? To be able to move to the next step, because I've kind of gotten to this point with all of my own power, and
Hmm.
and now to go to a next step, I do feel like I'm to that point where I do need that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think, same thing for me when I was starting my speaking business. I've been a
Yeah.
practicing lawyer for 24 years. I speak all the
Sure.
time. But when you want to go to the next level, then you figure out, okay, who can take
Yes.
me there, right? Who are
Yes.
the people that I need to bring into my life?
Right.
And on this journey that you've been on, right, for these 14 years now,
Yep. Yep.
um, what would you say to, entrepreneurs, aspiring, especially as women entrepreneurs who are really just, they have this vision, but
Mhm.
something's to either something or someone is telling them, no, don't, maybe not. What would you tell them to keep them in forward progress?
I would tell them to block out all of that, right? Because there's zero room for that. We don't want to associate with people who tell us no, and there will be people like that. But you've got to be able to kind of zero in. I kind of think like being a CEO and a creator kind of isolates you a little bit, right? And where you have to go into your own mind and kind of disassociate with that mindset. You've got to create your own mindset inside of yourself, and then you have to really become obsessed with your goals to the point that it's basically all you think about, right? And the more obsessed you get, the more likely it is that you're going to succeed, because you won't give up on those small little failures, right? um, so that's what I would say: obsession and just relentlessness, and finding the voices and the people who get you along the way, whether it is books or people, and just connecting with those ideas, and just I'm going to hold on to it, right? I'm going to go with it. That's what I would tell
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And your story is such, I was saying you're the epitome of, of necessity is the mother of invention,
Yeah.
but it's also how a thought in your mind, right? Just filling a gap can
Right.
really result into something huge, because you started this on your kitchen table,
Mhm.
and like in the next 2 years, you're expected to have sales of $100 million. Right?
Well, that's the
Yeah.
hope,
That's the
right?
hope, right? Well, that we're going to put it in the atmosphere that
Yeah,
that's what's going to happen.
that's what's going to
Yes.
happen.
We'll put it
Exactly.
in the atmosphere. But I mean, your company is profitable,
Yes.
right? And
Yes, for
so,
sure.
so I think that that's also an important lesson to learn from you, that sometimes we think, it's just this little thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And we think that it's not going to make a big impact, but as you say, be obsessed about the goal, be obsessed about the idea, and not obsessed, we think sometimes obsessed is a negative term, but it's really being focused, like intently
Yes.
focused, and being intentional about reaching your goal.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And I would say obsession is the only word I can say, and relentlessness, and how you are going to, what you need to learn, right? Every time I get stuck, and it happens often, and it happens to all people, right? They get stuck and plateau. And as soon as I catch myself like in that space, it's like, what do I have to learn? Who do I need to meet? Where do I got to go now? Right?
Yeah.
What new experience do I have to have? And that immediately like shakes you out of it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's another piece.
Yeah. You are awesome. Mia,
Thanks.
I love your story. I do. I love your story, because when I think about leveraging, when I think about, ladies who leverage, that is exactly what I'm thinking about. Women who have a vision and are relentless about doing what it takes in
Right.
order to make that become a reality, right? And not
Exactly.
stopping. And like you said, when you fall, get back up. And even if the fall is huge, you got to figure out a way to get back up and to
Yep.
keep going. So
Yep.
I want to thank you so much for being on Ladies Who Leverage podcast. But I want to I want you to tell people, especially new moms or somebody who knows somebody who's going to be a new mom and needs, we all, whether we have one baby or three, we need an extra pair of arms. So where can people either contact you, just if they want to learn more about you, and where can they find out more about the Snuggle Me Lounger?
Sure. So our website is snugglemeorganic.com. You can also find us on Instagram, which is at snuggle_me_organic.
Excellent. So, everyone, please support Mia. Her story is amazing, and I hope this has been an inspiration for you. And as I said, Ladies Who Leverage is all about empowering women to live life unapologetically AF. We want you to have those dreams and those goals and to go after them. Take the action that's necessary for you to be able to turn your dreams into reality. So if you are a female entrepreneur, you are a side hustler, or you're a woman in career transition, and you want to find a group of like-minded women who are going to support you, but also hold you accountable, then I invite you to join our Ladies Who Leverage community. You can go to TEAM lwl.com, and it will take you into our membership portal and also into our Facebook group. So again, teamlwl.com. We are looking for women who are ready to take action, to take control of their life. So again, Mia, thank you so much for being here with us today, and make sure that you all subscribe to the Ladies Who Leverage podcast so that you never miss an episode. Take care. Thanks for joining us. This podcast is brought to you by Lady Lawyer Media. If you're a badass woman who's ready to take action to live life unapologetically AF, then you need to join our global community on Facebook, Ladies Who Leverage. And remember to subscribe to our podcast. And until next time, let's collabosource, strategize, and monetize.